Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is January 16th, 2023, and we are in the Old Testament. We are in the book of Genesis, and we're going to read chapter 16 today. Okay, so we're in the story of Abram. Abraham is what he's going to become in a few chapters here, but right now he's Abram. God is working on the relationship, working towards restoring the relationship. Doesn't quite get all the way with Abram, just like he didn't get that far with Noah or David down the line. But what we're seeing here is God teaching us what he expects from us and what we should expect from him. We saw with Noah, it was all about obedience, obedience, obedience. You're going to build an ark, animals are going to come, you're going to load them on the ark, and you're going to be ready because I'm going to destroy the world. And then we saw that Noah fell a little bit and he got drunk and brought shame to himself. So a few steps forward, step back. We're going to see that a lot of these covenants. We take us a little bit forward, but then there's a fall. Now with Abram, he's got obedience down. God tells him, hey, you know what? Pack up your stuff and go. And he packs up his stuff and he goes. And he just trusts that the Lord is going to lead him where he needs to be, and he's been rewarded, and he's blessed, and he's living a bountiful life, as we're seeing in here. He's having success in everything he does. His nephew is kidnapped. He goes to war to get him back. Boom, decisive victory. As he's coming back, he's met by an earthly king, and he's met by Melchizedek, the high priest of the Lord. He responds to Melchizedek, gives him a tenth of everything he owns, worships God with him, tells the earthly king, don't want nothing to do with it. So we're seeing obedience, obedience, obedience. What does God want to add? He wants to add faith. He wants to add that, God says he's going to do something, we can trust him that he's going to do it. And we see that the promise he keeps making to Abram is you're going to have descendants more than you can ever count, and they're going to inherit this whole region that I'm walking you through. In fact, they're going to be the salvation of the earth, of all the people on the earth. And Abram kind of says, well, that's great God, but he's looking around at his wife who's old and past childbearing age, supposedly, and he's looking at himself who's supposedly past childbearing age, and he's saying, you know what, I mean, that's great, you're promising me all this, but I don't have any kids, so I don't know how you're going to do it. And it culminates with a vision, and God tells him, no, this is what's going to happen. You are going to have what I'm promising you, and it is going to come from a child, your child. And he even goes to the point in this vision of doing a ritual that in 6,000 years ago would have been how you would ratify a treaty with somebody. You cut some animals in half, you lay them on a path, you walk down the path and say, hey, you know what, if I fall this way, you can do to me what we did to those animals. If you go that way, I'm going to do to you what you did to these animals. So it's a very solemn event. And Abram understands that, hey, you know what, I think God might really be going to do this. I need to have the magic word, faith, that God can fulfill his promises. So he's coming closer to God. And what we say is we get closer, a couple steps back. So we're going to get a couple steps back here when we read this section here in chapter 16, because now he's got the promise. He understands, well, God is going to reward me with offspring, even though I don't know how it's going to happen. But instead of waiting for God, he and his wife decide, well, let's force the issue. If we need kids, then I'm going to give you my slave woman. You'll go sleep with her. When she has a child, then we'll say that that's our child. Now, that's not the way God wanted it, but Abram and his wife, they want to not trust the God. They want to make it happen themselves. So we get a little closer to faith, but we're also kind of further back. I know it's a lot of how we are in our lives. We want to help. You know what? I don't want to wait for God. I want to go do it myself. That's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to wait. If God says he's going to do something for you, then God will do that for you. He doesn't want you to go do it for yourself. That's you pushing God out of the way and saying, I don't need you. And that's essentially what Abram and his wife did here by going to the slave woman and having her conceive of a child. And in fact, it makes it messed up, because then we get Ishmael, and now we've got someone who isn't in the blessing order, but he's got to be dealt with. So he has to become his own people, and he starts some nations that further down the line are going to be in conflict. So let's go ahead and we're going to read Genesis chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me." So Abram said to Sarai, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand." The angel of the Lord said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. He shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, "Have I also here seen him who sees me?" Therefore the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. May God bless the reading of his word. May God bless you. Bye.